It is Monday. Thank you so much for joining me on What's the 411. Of course, we're excited. We're excited. There's too much happening, too much going on right now, right? There's a lot happening. A lot happening with 416 Love. There's a lot happening in Toronto. There's a lot happening in the world, and we're excited. Super excited about everything that is going on. We are excited to be here. Hey. So I want to thank you guys for joining me. Thank you so much. We have a lot going on. Make sure you check my page. Make sure you jump on to what we have happening on Saturday. Our first virtual summit, okay, is going to be taking place on Saturday. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. We've been working really, really hard on this summit, and it's coming together. You know, it's coming together. It is happening this Saturday, okay? So, of course, we have the wonderful Tashi from 30 Elephants Incorporated that is joining the conversation today. So, let me add her to our conversation. And we're going to get this conversation on and popping right now. Very excited. Hey, how are you?
Hi, beautiful.
How are you doing?
I am good. I'm just winding down after a long day of momming.
It's been a couple of long days, eh?
What? It's like,
My goodness. My goodness. So of course, I am meeting you for the first time, but
yeah.
some of our viewers may know you. But I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Let us know who you are, what you do. You know what I mean?
Let's see. Hi, Sheena. I am Tashi. I just go by Tashi. I am a mom of three. I actually have two businesses. I'm a doula by day, and then I travel the world with youth during the summer. and
Wow.
And at the moment, I'm also chef and teacher and Uber Uber driver for my for my kids. But
Wow.
it's good. It's all good. It's healthy. It's healthy.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you're into a lot.
Yeah, life is meant to be lived. Live it.
Yes, that's right. 100%. 100%. So how did you get involved with, or tell us first of all, what is 30 Elephants?
So the number one question I get asked is why the name and why 30 elephants.
Right.
Um, so I have this weird obsession with elephants because they're a matriarchal society. So the
Okay.
elephants and their herds are run by the women. But then the number 30, there was a list of things that I wanted to accomplish before I turned 30. So I
Okay.
just smashed those names together. And I remember on my first trip to Kenya, we were with the Tabarak youth group in the Mara, all men. And they were like, when we heard the name 30 Elephants, we were expecting like these big men. And here you are, he's like, you're just this small woman. And then so like when I explained it to them, they were like, wow. And in the Mara, you're a youth until you turn 30. So I was like,
Oh,
oh, that makes it even more, even more fantastic. But by the time I explained to them all the things I wanted to accomplish and about um, elephants literally showcasing the strength in women, all the men were applauding. Warrior, like the warriors. It's like, oh wow. So that's the story behind the name. I love elephants and the fact that they're a matriarchal society and they're extremely gentle animals despite their size.
great.
They're also very fierce when you mess with them. I appreciate and respect that too as a mother. As a mother. Um,
Yes.
and how we started. I grew up in Yokosuka, Japan, and as you can imagine, there's not a lot of people that look like me in Japan. About, but I loved it. It was one of the most amazing experiences in my life, and I was there for 11 years. So all of my formative years, I was in Japan. Um, and it's funny because like the big conversation now is about cultural appropriation. However, my entire youth in Japan, it was more cultural exchange and appreciation, which I don't think many people get to see. So when I came back and I went to the States. I went to Howard University, and I wrote my entrance exam for Howard on the global community and how we can become a part of it. And then as I'm talking to these other university students, and I'm like, what do you mean you've never left your city? Like, what do you mean you've never left your state? Like, I don't understand. How have you not been? And then the number one reason that people weren't traveling was money. And I'm like, okay. So, and I read somewhere, they said, ask your kids not what they want to be when they grow up, but what problem they want to solve. And it struck me so profoundly because I realized that my 17-year-old self then, I had answered that question for myself, not what I wanted to be, but what problem I wanted to solve. And I wanted to make the world more accessible to people because money shouldn't be the reason you don't see the world and experience all the beauty that's in it. And I think respect and appreciation and education, that's a whole different topic for another day. But respect and appreciation, along with education, will solve a lot of the problems that we're having right now. If people, you don't have to like someone, but you absolutely have to respect them and their way of life. And that starts with you first knowing what the hell their way of life is.
Right.
So I graduated. I moved to Toronto because I met a man and fell in love. And it's again another story for a different day. But so that's important to the story because my mother-in-law worked at Alexandra Park Community Center, and she was extremely supportive from day one. I was like, I have this crazy idea that I want to take kids to different places around the world, but I want it to be free for them. And everyone else was like, yeah, good luck with that. But my mother-in-law was extremely supportive from day one. And so she's like, well, here's a community center. Do what you need. And the community at Alexandra Park was so open and so welcome. The money did not come easily. We were selling Krispy Kreme donuts on the street. Queen and Spadina, we set up a table and started selling donuts to raise money for our first trip. I incorporated in January. We took our first trip in June. I'm not one of those people that waits very long. I see things and I go. I started in January 2007, and we're still going. Thankfully, we no longer have to sell donuts for our trip. Thank God. It's a lot of donuts to get a trip to Japan.
Wow.
It's a lot of donuts.
That is amazing. So you started this.
I did. I did.
You started this. That's big. Big up yourself, man. That's huge.
I don't.
That's huge.
It doesn't register with me on most days.
You gotta big up yourself, man. Make that register. You are taking kids that probably would have never experienced the world if it wasn't for you and your idea, right? So
Yeah.
that's huge. And then that question, I have to ask my children that question. What problem they want to solve. Yeah.
Yeah, it changes things.
Because,
Like when you say, what do you want to be? Like a lot of kids will spout out the most cliche things or things that they've seen. But when you change the question, like, what do you want to, what problem do you want to solve or what do you want to fix? They don't even, they might not even know there's a word for the thing that they want to do, which amazing. It's amazing when you pose that to children.
right.
And I say children,
Right.
but a lot of my students are we work with ages 14 to 19. And so when I get students that are about to graduate and you ask them the same question, okay, well, what's going on in life? I'm like, oh, I don't know. When you say, well, what do you want to solve? That's amazing. To see the light bulb click in their head. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's cool.
And then this age, 14 to 19, is that age. When you're young, you may think you know what you want to do, but then when you get to you have no idea. You're just probably want to do everything. You know what I mean? But then when you actually go through high school and you're in high school, you kind of get a little bit of a better idea of what you may be interested in. So that's the best question to ask a graduate before they even step into college or apply for college or university.
It's ridiculous to expect this 17 or 18-year-old to decide what they want to do for the rest of their life. They don't even know what they want to wear or eat or do with their hair that day, but you expect them to pick a career at 17? So it's like, no, no, no. Let me show you the world. Let's see what's there first, because you don't know what you don't know yet.
Right,
And
right.
it's great. It's amazing to watch these kids. Everything is new.
Yeah,
Yeah, everything is new.
right. Wow. So talk to us about the trips. Where have you guys gone? What have you learned?
Oh, I don't think we have
I
enough
know
time to talk about what
probably.
I've
Yeah,
learned.
I don't know. I don't know. Do
Um,
we?
so let's see. We've done Japan, of course. That was our first place because that's where I was most familiar with. And um, so we did Japan, we did Malaysia. My husband and I just scouted Ethiopia. We did Kenya. We did India. Unfortunately, the pandemic is like, it shafted our trip to the Philippines, but that was next on our agenda. We have Ghana up on our list, and we just keep adding places every year because the trips themselves, it's not just like, hey, we're going to go on a vacation. There's a volunteer component to every trip, and it's more of a cultural immersion. And so we don't just go and stay in a hotel and exist within the country. You know, we go out into the community. So, like for example, when we go to Japan, we stay in traditional ryokans, and they have to put on their kimonos, and we just go out. We take the train everywhere, um, and we go to the market. We meet youth their age, and so that's the point of the culture classes. Is because I don't believe in taking anyone anywhere ignorant. Like you have to know where you're going. Um,
Right.
I remember my second trip to Japan. The kids were bickering, bickering, and bickering. That's we'll get there in a moment. They were bickering about something, so I stopped on the corner in Japan, and I was like, okay, well, you have to work this out. So they wanted to eat, but they couldn't remember their lessons. So I'm like, okay, well, we're going to stand here until you remember what it was we learned in class. It was the funniest thing to see this group. There was like 5 or 6 of them, and and because they were bickering, so in the classes we put in leadership skills along with the cultural component. So, like for example, when we were doing Kenya, one of the courses, like the whole class was on conflict resolution, and we stay in the Mara with the Maasai, and they used to have beef with the Kipsiki tribe. So we took conflict resolution and we related to one, the place that we're going, and then to their everyday life. So
Mm.
with Japan, if you talk about feudal Japan, all that goes on there. So they have to take their lessons in conflict resolution and apply it to whatever they were bickering about. It's probably about where we were going to go for dinner. The most amazing thing happened. So not only did they work it out, they ended up rapping on the street corner in Japan, just because you have a bunch of racialized children and they're really into music, and they started rapping on the street corner in Japan, throwing in their random Japanese vocabulary. And by the end of it, we found some place to eat. Nobody was arguing anymore. Nobody was grumpy. But more importantly, is the people around us, because we were in Shinjuku at the time, amazing place. They stopped and were trying to join in, but obviously their Japanese was not that great and their English was horrible. But it was an amazing experience because, as I said earlier, it's about a cultural exchange rather than an appropriation of culture. And for them, it was really eye opening, and it was really cool. I still laugh about that with those particular students about the trip itself and how
That
we
is
tied it all
awesome.
in.
That is awesome, man. Wow. So you were mentioning the culture classes. Talk a bit about those. Like, what does that entail?
So for 3 months prior to wherever we're gonna go, we have to learn the language, the history, the culture, the people, and the foods of where we're going. And this is important for me. Um, Again, I don't. Ignorance is simply lack of knowledge. So we try and alleviate that before going. Um, Also, because we just dive into the culture, a lot of these students have never been on a plane before, and again, have never even left their city, let alone on the province or state or country. So I try and lessen the culture shock that way. So for languages that I don't speak myself, or that anyone in my close, so like when we went to Malaysia, my good friends on the ground there, she will Skype in and she'll do the back and forth teaching the language component. And then, so with the first class, I'll ask the children what they know about where we're going. That in itself is always a barrel of laughs. Some of the things you get back, especially when we talk about places on the continent. Some of the things you hear, I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun then. Because, again, they think they know, but they have no idea. Um, so I'll ask them what they know about the country, and surprisingly, they know nothing about the food. So I'll have them do some homework. They go and they tell me what foods they want to make. And then, like our fourth or fifth class, we make some of the traditional dishes from wherever we're going to go, and that's obviously everyone's favorite class. Um, I think Japan and India were my two favorite food classes. But you learn a lot about a people by cooking their foods. You learn what things grow in that country. You learn about how they eat in that country. You learn about the socialization around food in that country. So the food class is a really fun class. Um, the language is always a bit tougher, but it's still fun. It's still fun. And some of my students will still email me in whatever language they learned, um, which is pretty awesome. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel really good.
So how many languages do you know?
My Tagalog is horrible because I have no one to practice. I have no one to practice with. My Japanese is good. You can drop me off anywhere in Japan and I'm safe. My Spanish, eh, and any French I ever learned in class has gone out of my ear. So it's pretty much just Japanese and English. I have to call my Filipino friends and tell them we have to work on my Tagalog, seeing as though the Philippines is our next destination. I have to work on that immediately.
Okay, okay. So when are you guys planning this trip to Philippines?
So unfortunately, we were supposed to leave the day everything got shut down. So we started an
Talk
extension
about
program.
COVID.
It was awful. Um, we started an extension program to continue to support our youth. So I found a lot of students going through the program, being super excited, having seen the world and having no idea what to do after. So I was like, okay, well, how do I further support these students? And so what I started doing was taking some of our graduate students and they had to pay it forward. So for them, I would give them job experience and they would then have to take that and plan a trip for students that haven't yet experienced the program. So for example, on the Philippines trip, I'm taking a student that went to India, one that went to Kenya, and then one that went to Japan. Their job was now to plan a trip to the Philippines for a group of 10. So basically, they're learning project management skills. So they had to research everything. They then had to now learn the language. They didn't have to write the lesson plan and the curriculum, but they had to tell me what kinds of things these students need to know to go on the trip. And it's really funny because two of the students were like, I had no idea you put this much work into it. She's like, yeah, this is a lot. It's like, well, yeah, I'm taking 10 teenagers. You have to think of everything, especially because you're asking of nothing from the family. So you have to think of everything for them. So the Philippines, we were supposed to leave March 14th. And early in the morning, we got an email saying, yeah, we're closing down the country, so you can't come. And we were already nervous about going anyway. And they're like, you
Yeah.
can come, but you won't be able to leave. You won't be able to move anywhere. We're like, okay, well, obviously we can't come. Like
Yeah.
the Philippines is a great place to be stuck, but I'm sure my husband would have killed me because I take my kids with me when I travel. Um, so that got cut off, and now we're very much looking forward to the world opening up again. Yeah.
Aren't we all? But definitely, so that these kids are probably like anxious to get over there. They've learned everything. They've taken their culture classes. They've done the meal.
They've
You know,
done the
they're trying to
work.
get over
Yeah,
there.
they've done the work. And they put in I'm really proud of them. Like they did risk assessments. They did they did some really, really good detailed work. I'm very proud of them. So
Speaking of risk, has anything crazy ever happened on any of these trips?
we had one student who took the wrong malaria medication once. That was
Uh-oh.
interesting. Um, that was very interesting. Um, I have to say a big thank you to Zimi at Psychicle. She does all of our student selections, and she's a therapist. So she tries to weed through a lot of that before it's a huge risk taking a teenager anywhere. But taking them to the other side of the world is an even bigger risk. So Zemi at Psychicle, she selects the students, she goes through their essay and make sure they meet all the criteria. And then, if necessary, she'll perform an interview with them to make sure that they're okay. So there was one really unfortunate situation where we had a student who was suicidal. And so we could not take her. But then she did the work and she attended therapy for a year. And then, like, everybody came out glowing. And we wanted to offer her the trip again this year. And then COVID happened. So that sucked.
Yeah.
On the trip, so when we first started, as you're still learning and growing, like as a new business, you have your idea, and then sometimes the universe is like, no, we're gonna go left. So we were still figuring out exactly how we were gonna make it work, and so we had some students who were paying for the trip, and then some students who weren't. So we obviously traveling around the world for 2 to 3 weeks at a time is not cheap. So we had some very affluent students of color, and then we had some students who were from some not so friendly places. And we ended up coming to blows on the top of a volcano one year. However, to this day, it is one of the most special and amazing memories I've ever had. Because you have this really affluent kid who is shouting at the kid from the hood. He's like, well, if you don't like where you live, why don't you just move? And the kid from the hood lost it. Like, he yelling, screaming. He's a big kid. Love this young man. He was a big kid, but you could see his face change and read it, like anger, fury, like flushing in the face. And all of a sudden, he took a moment, he took a deep breath. And he was like, do you think I want to live where I live? And to the kid who grew up, he's the son of a doctor, his whole life has been handed to him. Like, so much so that he once at, like, on our way to the airport, he's like, we're not flying first class. I was like, seriously, kid? It was a whole thing. But the kid from the hood explained to him, he's like, do you think I want to live where I live? And like, the exchange taught me so much about how much we have to learn from each other right in our own backyard, which was amazing. By the end of that trip, those two young men became friends. My young buddy from the hood invited his affluent now friend to a party with him in the hood, and I still get stories about this to this day. But they became friends. But like, kids are big these days. It must be the growth hormones. But like, to watch these two young men, and we're on top of a volcano, and they're like fighting, and there are no rails up there, and they're about to come to blows. But watching his whole facial expression, and then him articulate himself so clearly about the ways of life that this young man, who had so much privilege, didn't even understand, somebody who lives 10 minutes away from him. It was one of my favorite memories, and I love that kid. And it's one of my first trips too. That was like my second or third trip ever.
Wow.
It was intense. It was intense.
On a mountain. A volcano.
On a volcano, no less. On a volcano, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that was really my next question is, what differences have you seen in these teens? Like, you bring them from all walks, and then they go on this trip with you. Like, do you see a transformation from the beginning of when they start this journey to when they get back?
I do. So I told myself that I need to go get another degree in counseling, because it's amazing what comes out of some of these children and some of the things that they hold on to and don't even realize. Another one of my favorite students, she was a refugee, and she worked so hard to go on a trip that she never got allowed to take. She was never allowed to go on. And she went through all the classes. She didn't get to go on the trip. And then she watched everyone that she went through the classes with go on the trip and then come back and talk about the trip. And then a few years later, her sister got to go on the trip. And I remember when she was in when she was in the classes, her mother actually threatened to kill me. Um, it was really intense. Her mother had her when she was young, and her mother was like, and she was the oldest of her siblings, and her mother was like, I didn't get to experience life. What are you showing my kid? Like, what are you showing her? But it was a very intense thing. She's like, she doesn't need to do these things, and I didn't get to do it. Why should she? And so on and so forth. Um, and I often get asked, like, if I take a sibling, will I take another sibling, like in the same family? And I do, because it's amazing to assist one child. It is very rare that you get the opportunity to help uplift an entire family, and they earn it, because it's not, I'm not giving you anything. These kids, they work for it, they earn it. So it's
Right.
amazing. So this young lady didn't get a chance to go on the trip, but her younger sister got to go a few years later to someplace else. So she was trying to go to Japan. Her younger sister, one got to go to Kenya, and then even further down the line, her baby sister got to go to India. And watching her, and then watching her mother change between her journey and then her younger sister and then her baby sister, watching the entire family grow was one of the most amazing things I've ever. So while she did not get to go, which is really sad, and she's aged out of the program now, that's one of the most amazing things. So no, it's not a specific child, but watching the whole family grow, that's priceless. Like watching the whole family blossom and grow and heal, you can't put a like you. It's amazing. And I still talk to all of them today. They're lovely. Like they're lovely. We're all friends. It's
That's
it's
awesome.
beautiful. Yeah.
So you pretty well keep in touch with all of the students that you've come encountered with?
Most of them, yeah. If they haven't like gone to the ends of the earth or are like in their 20s now and think that they're grown, most of them, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. So what are like some of, well, you shared a lot of memorable moments, but
Hmm.
give us a couple more of your trips.
I think one of my favorite things about doing this, um, so I started doing this before I had my own children, but I always knew that I wanted to have a career or a life where it was in tandem with my family and I wouldn't have to pause to bring my family in or to flip back and forth. So on my trips, my kids come, and that's twofold, because I can't expect someone else to trust me with their children if I wouldn't even bring my own. so so there's that. So I bring my kids, and my kids get to meet all these other wonderful wonderful children. And there was one time in Kenya when we had gone to the girls' school, and as soon as we pull up, I have I have my son strapped to me, and this little girl, she like came up to my hip, takes my kid from me without saying anything, takes my child, straps my kid to herself, and goes running off. And so, and because I spend so much time with my students before we even get on the plane, one of my students takes off after my child, like, bring back. And I'm like, calm down. It's okay. But I think my favorite memory is, some of my favorite memories are watching my kids interact with these youth and watching us all become family, um, no matter where we are in the world, which is interesting. Um, I have some really good moments. The time where, like, if the students forget the words for food and I tell them that I'm not going to help them, and if they end up eating eel, that's their business. Those are like some of my favorite moments. I love how every place we ever go, even if I've been there 1,000 times, it's always new because I'm seeing it through new eyes, which is super dope. Like, I grew up in Japan, but when the kids get off the plane and they're taking pictures of the fire hydrant because the fire hydrants look drastically different there, I can't help but giggle because it's like it's a fire hydrant, but to them, they've never seen a fire hydrant look that way. And then I'll have like the next group of students, because I try and curtail the trip to the interest of the students that are going. So like one year I had a group of students that were heavily into fashion. So we did a lot of Shinjuku and Harajuku. And then you have students that are interested in anime. So that'll make the trip, each trip will look a little different for each group of students. Um, but I love how every time I go somewhere, it's always something new because the students are new, no matter how many times I've been to that place. Um, so I have like thousands of memories. Screaming bush babies in Kenya, freaking out the children, one of my favorite memories. Because obviously we have no bush babies here, so when the kids there hear them and they're freaking out, hilarious because I know to expect it and they don't. So watching them react to the stark differences between their home and the other kids is pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Must be. Oh my gosh. So how has this changed your life? I mean, you have like I mean you started out when you didn't have children,
Hmm.
then you brought children in and you're just it seems like such a dynamic thing that you're doing, like so amazing. Like how has it changed your life?
I've never been a really like big person. I'm very much an introvert, but this reminds me how much a part of the global community we are, but more importantly, how small each of us are. Like everyone loves to think or wants to be larger than life, but then you realize how humbling this is when you travel to other parts of the world. And I love to talk to my kids about first world problems. So like when we go certain places and they can only bathe with one bucket of water, and it seems so very small. Um, and they're like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Yeah, you have to wash your hair and your body with this one bucket of water, and you may not have that tomorrow, and you don't have that water unless we walk down to the river, get it, and come back." Um, it makes me appreciate everything in life, um, even my children. So my second son, his name is Masai because one year I couldn't go to Kenya because the timing of the trip, I was very pregnant. My doctor was like, "Yeah, you're not getting on a plane," and I was angry. And so I named him Masai. Be careful what you name your children because they live up to that name. He's quite the warrior. Um, but I think that's what I learned. I learned to be very humble, but also to be, I want more. I don't ever, I want everything that I do to leave this world a much better place. I need to do more. I need to always make sure whatever it is I'm doing is for the betterment of somebody other than myself. That's what this has taught me. Be bigger, like live for more than just you.
Wow.
Very,
And
very.
that's the way to live. That's definitely a motto to go by,
Yeah.
be the example that you want
Yeah.
to see in the world, and then leave a stamp, right?
Yeah.
Because you are impacting so many children's lives, not only here, but when you go out to these different countries. I'm sure those people remember you and they remember you bringing these youth to their country and showing them a different life. Because as much as you're showing these children something different, those children out there in their communities are all learning something different as well. So it's like a shared experience.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that because I think on a few of the trips that we go on, we're often the only black group there, which is
Right,
fascinating. Which is fascinating. We're used, especially so young. So
right.
when they see the group, and my students are really well behaved, I genuinely adore them. So we go and they see this group of young black kids, and they have no idea what to think initially. And then, I find this to be really even better is when we go to the continent and we're taking a group of black kids, we get so many stares because they're used to seeing white tourists in the savannah. Ironically, they're used to seeing that.
Yeah.
Very interesting when they see a group of black kids.
Yeah.
It's pretty
Yeah.
fascinating.
That is, it definitely is. So how many children do you have?
I have three. I have three.
Just like me, girl. High five. Bam.
Yay! How old are your kids?
10, 8, and 5. What
Okay.
about you?
So I have 8, 6, and 4.
Wow, okay. They're spaced out very nicely. That works well. They grow together. It's a lot of work all at once,
It is.
but as they get older,
It works.
trust me, it gets better.
It, it's loud.
So you have a
Quiet
boy.
in my house.
Yeah.
This is the quietest.
So you said you have a middle child, boy, but what else do you have? All boys, girl? Is
I
there a
have
girl in there?
2 boys and a girl, and my daughter was a surprise. I was done with the 2 boys, and then my daughter came and changed life.
Like, dang. Yeah.
It changed life.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I guess your kids keep you motivated. This whole business keeps you motivated, but you mentioned, you are doing so much. How do you stay motivated?
I have no idea. If I had to, I don't. I think it's there's so much work to be done. That's just it. There's so much work to be done, and I always joke with my dad. It's like, well, unless you're gonna die, you may as well get up, and if you're up, do something. And like, so now he jokes when I talk to him. He's like, well, I'm not dead yet, so I must do something. So I was like, okay, well, yes, if I'm up, I must do like live. You have to. One of my good friends, she's like, live on purpose. So literally, live. Like that's what keeps me motivated. If I'm going to be here, do something worth doing. Like, don't speak if you have nothing to say. Don't like. What motivates me is that I'm here, and there are so many that aren't. So if I'm here, I need to do something.
So true.
Yeah.
That's important to remember, like, especially during this time right now
Yeah.
with the COVID, you know, a lot of people are losing people. They are losing, you know, the norm of what they would have thought
Uh,
is normal, right?
yeah.
And trying to develop a new norm.
That term
Like,
always
so,
bothers me. The new normal. I get it, but normal wasn't working for so many people.
and yeah, that's why I think that this situation kind of did happen for everything happens for a reason,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I feel like maybe we needed this global pandemic in a way to help shake people out of that norm because you can kind of get stuck in a routine.
Yeah.
You get stuck in doing things that you necessarily want to change, but nothing is forcing you to kind of change. So you
Yep.
just roll with it, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. Nothing. Yeah. Nothing was working. Nothing was working. And initially, like you're lashing out at the pandemic and having to be stuck in your home and the lack of control you have over your own life. And then when you take a moment and you sit in that quiet space, you can find the good in almost anything if you take that moment. And it took the pandemic in order for people to take the time to have all these protests. And while they are awful and they are horrible and there's so many things that are bad in them, there's a whole lot that needed to be said that we have the time now to do because nobody has to go to work. Like we have the time. Like no one has to risk losing their job now to speak up. As silly as that sounds in some ways, like everything works out for the greater good. Mother Nature was tired. She was tired of us. she was tired of us. And she's like, one
right?
way or another, you're gonna listen. And we've listened. Hopefully
Yeah.
we've listened.
Yeah, hopefully,
I'm
because it's
hoping.
easy to get yeah, like it's easy to get stuck for a lot of us, out there in a particular situation, especially when, you know, I hear from a lot of people they hate change.
Yep.
You know, they hate when things are changing. They hate to embrace change. So if you're that type of individual, it's this global pandemic is hard for some people.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people talking about the difficulties that they've found with dealing with this situation. You know,
Yeah.
it's either you're thriving, you're doing the
Yeah.
most, or you are like right, or you are just like stuck at home going crazy,
Going
trying to figure out
crazy.
like yeah, like when to get back to the mall or when to get back to, you know, whatever.
I find that like one of my friends sent this really funny joke. She was like, imagine smudging your house and you're the one that passed out because you're the toxic energy. And I find that this pandemic, having people locked in the house with themselves, has a whole lot of interesting things coming out. A
Yeah,
lot of very interesting things.
yeah.
You know, do the work.
And it gets us. Sorry?
People like do the work. It's painful, but we have to do the work.
Yeah. And that's what I was just gonna say. Like it's interesting that you hear people talking about that, but at the same time it's like you need that time with yourself.
Yeah,
You know? Like it helps you to figure out where you're going, what you're doing, you know, certain goals that you may want to revisit,
yeah.
you know, and then other things that need to just drop off, you know, and you gotta let go.
It's a good time to realize what's important and what's not.
$100%.
It's a very good time. You realize a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you were supposed to head over to the Philippines, and then, of course, you mentioned this pandemic came through. How else have things changed for you and your family during this time?
Because I'm such of an introvert, I'm okay. My husband is he's an extroverted introvert, so for him it took a while to adjust. And then
Right.
for my kids, they're fine being at home, um, but socially is where they're losing their mind. Like we can play Uno for like 1,000 times a day, but it's still just them and us. And like it's gotten to the point where like we wake up in the morning and they'll just go. They're like on autopilot. Um, I think I've like zoomed out. I now have a visceral reaction to Zoom at this point.
Mhm.
But you learn to pivot. You you learn to pivot. So as far as like
Definitely.
business, my mother-in-law again, who supports any wild idea I throw at her, she's like, you know, you've homeschooled your kids for a while. And so she's like, well, why don't you just open a school? And I was like, what? So now my mother-in-law is trying to get us to open a school, um, a black-owned and run private school.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, so that may be something next that for 30 elephants and where we're going and the community-based learning and education, which is
That
not.
would tie right in because you definitely are on, you're already there. You know, you just have to, and I'm pretty sure you, when you think about it, if you've been homeschooling your children, then you have a curriculum,
Yeah,
you have what you need. You know, you've got all the tools. Um, you're good to go. That's amazing. Yeah, you know, you just got to sit down and probably plan out certain things, but
yeah.
you're on that way. You're on the way.
We're putting it in the universe, and therefore
Yeah,
it will come back.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So let us know what do you have coming up?
Oh, depending on which way the wind blows with this world and this pandemic.
Right.
Like my immediate focus for 30 elephants, I'd like to provide a space um, for an education bubble because from what I heard from a lot of parents is that with the kids going online and especially kids in the public school system, is that the teachers taught for like an hour and it was a disaster and all this. So what I'd like to do is have a space for families. So instead of trying to give every kid a computer, why don't you have a space where the computers are, and then you have the families rotate so that they have everything that they need without costing their families anything. Like, I'm a huge advocate of trying not to burden the family with the cost. So providing a
Right.
space for families to come in and have access to computers, to printers, to all of those things. And that's what I'm working on for the fall, is having a space for families to come and get that done. And like, they can book in 2 hour increments. And then for families that don't already or need supplemental education, that will also be available to them as well.
Awesome. It's definitely, I'm sure, very, very required, especially right now where
Yeah.
people are everywhere you go, whether you know the parent or not, if they see you with kids. Are you sending your kids back to
Yes,
school? Are you sending your kids back to school? Like, that is the number one
that's
question
the
right now,
question. And yeah,
right?
and there's like instant anxiety and stress. And so,
Yes. Yes.
again,
Yes.
what problem do you want to solve? I'd like to alleviate that because I know what that's like as a parent, and that's hard and it sucks. So we want to make it a little bit easier and better that way for people.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, and then of course, I always like to end the show off with like a motivational quote. So, do you happen to have like anything motivational, inspirational that you kind of live by or you go by that you'd like to share to inspire the audience tonight?
It's not a quote, but they are words to live by. The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Have you heard of them?
Yes, I've read the book.
I
I love that. Yeah,
There are times where I have to keep reminding myself and like repeat them back to myself because
yeah.
they're not always easy to live by, because just some things you want to
Yep.
take personally. But I find that when you can exist within
I'm just
those
gonna
four
show you.
rules,
I have it like written on
yeah,
my desk. Like,
it's on my
I
vision
literally
board.
have the
Listen,
four agreements. It's
it's
like right
not
here.
about you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Four
Yeah.
Agreements, to be impeccable with your word, is
Number one.
one that most people just think, okay, say what you mean and mean what you say. Absolutely. But that also means to not do harm with the things that you say,
Right.
um, which is just as big as saying what you mean and meaning what you say. Don't do harm with
Right.
your words.
Right.
Um, and then always doing your best.
Yeah.
That's another one that it took me a while to struggle with, because your best isn't the same all the time.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
that one was really hard for me when I became a mom. Like,
Yeah.
you just have to know that you can only do what you can do. And then, like,
Right.
and then when you have three, you're like, okay, listen, today someone's hair is not getting combed, and it's just gonna
Yeah.
have to be okay. Like,
Yeah.
and that's a really hard one, I think, I find, for women in general, especially Black women. I think that's a very hard one for us in general. Um, and then don't make assumptions. I ask 1,001 questions. This is actually the easiest one. I will ask 1,001 questions, which drives my husband insane because it'll be like the dumbest question, but I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure. I just want to like. I had to see that one. And then I know I have conversations with my sister all the time about not taking things personally. Sometimes
Right.
that person's anger is not about you. And then more importantly, you have to realize sometimes that person's kindness is also not about you. You may be dealing
Hmm.
with a noble narcissist. You may be dealing with somebody's incessant need to help you, not because they want to help you, but because they must do something. It's not about
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
So those are great words to live by, and it will be hard some days, and some days it will be easy. But on the days when you're able to do all four, peace. There's just so
Yep.
much peace, so much ease. Nothing really bothers you. Like,
Yep.
it just flows. So the Four Agreements. If no one's read the book, that's watching, go read the book, or even just go
Yep.
look up the agreements and try and put them in. It's not about you. It's not about
Yep.
you. Don't assume. Do what you can do and be true to your word, and just go through life. Be at peace.
Yep. Definitely words to live by.
Yeah.
That book is an easy read too.
Yeah.
It's not too hard. You can get through it. It's when you're reading it, it's like, yes, Yes, yes. Like, okay, like you're answering all the questions,
Right.
like,
Like,
that
I
you,
get it. All
oh,
right.
I love that
Yeah.
book. It's amazing. It's an amazing book.
I think I have to
Wow.
get a new copy. Mine is like all jagged from things that I'm like highlighting, and then
Right?
sometimes I'll like
Yep.
throw the book.
Tabbed out.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so where can the audience find you?
We can be found right here on Instagram at 30 Elephants Inc. You can go to our website, which is 30-elephants.com. We can be found on Facebook at the same thing. So www.facebook, 30 Elephants Inc. Or you can just email us, Tashi or info at 30-elephants.com. We're always there doing something. Like, we're there.
All right. So I just want to thank you, Tashi, for coming on. I appreciate you. You definitely inspired us to, to live and to be a great example because you are doing it out here. You are a great example. Um, I don't even know what else to say. You put it all out there, girl. You gave us the 411 and we're happy. I'm grateful. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that you've been utterly wonderful. Like, your emails, your kindness radiates through the emails. I'm like, oh, yay. So I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you as well. Thank you so much for having us.
All right, and we'll definitely be in touch. If there is, I'd like to learn more about, what it is that, how I can, be of any assistance. And then, of course, what you have going on coming up in the future. We know you have this trip, but, how the application process works, if there are students that I could, recommend for you, just let me know and I'll definitely do so.
Absolutely. So as soon as submissions open back up, I will make sure that you know and send them our way.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so thank you so much, Tashi.
Yes,
You
thank
take care.
you. You as well. Go off to your children
Yes,
now.
I know, right? Mommy duties.
They are waiting.
Okay,
Take
take
care.
care, and I'll talk to you soon.
You too. Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Wow, guys. I'm telling you, those four agreements, if you haven't read the book, you need to read the book. The Four Agreements is a wonderful book. I was showing her, I literally wrote down the four agreements. I have them on a piece of paper and I read it to myself all the time because they're agreements that you need to live by. Be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personal. Don't make assumptions and always do your best. And, just live happy, live peaceful, and Tashi came on, she showed us what it is out here. You just got to do. You see something out here that you want to change, you just got to make the change. You've got to push yourself. Life is to be lived, as she said. You know what I mean? So we got to run out there. We got to do our thing. And that's going to look different for everybody. And we're not making assumptions. We're not taking anything personally. We're just going out there and we're doing our thing. 100%, right? And always doing your best. Always doing your best and understanding that your best is going to look different from day to day. So I just want to thank Tashi from 30 Elephants, CEO. She's making big moves out here. She's inspiring us. Wow, she's a mother of three. She's homeschooling her children, and she is about to start a school. So we can't wait to see where that takes her, where that journey takes her, and then, of course, how this is all going to be, who knows how many children she's going to be taking on these trips soon enough. If there's a school, there might be bigger trips coming. I don't know. We'll see what she has in store. We're excited, though. We're excited for her. So I just want to thank you guys for popping on. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I appreciate you. Make sure you head over to my page and you check out what we have going on Saturday. The summit is literally right there. Okay, it's right there. It's coming, and I'm pumped. I'm pumped. When you see our flyer, I hope you're dancing. I hope you get as excited as I am because it's going to be on and popping on Saturday. On and popping. So make sure you hit us up. Go over to sia.live/event. 2780, I believe. The link is in my bio, so make sure you link it in my bio. And yeah, head over there. It's going to be a wonderful time. You guys are going to be informed, motivated. You're going to see collaborative efforts from across the world, okay? So it's going to be big. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank Tashi again for coming through and supporting the show. So I'll see you guys right here on What's the 411 next week, where we will have another amazing guest. Okay? Have a great week. Bye, guys.